Hey guys, it's Rift here, and I apologise if my voice is a bit different in today's video. I have been not getting enough sleep recently, so I apologise about that. It's really fucking me up, but we'll push through regardless. So in today's video, I'm going to be taking a break from Ultimate Joker, and I'm going to be looking at a video that Gotham Paladin made. For context, in case you guys don't know who he is, he basically was the first person I was aware of that made the whole "was Peter nerfed" thing. His video is the one that Colin reacted to if you guys were in his live stream, and he made another video basically going over whether or not his spider sense was actually a consistent ability. Spoiler alert, he doesn't think it's a consistent ability, which I'm going to be going into, but if you guys enjoy more videos like this, feel free to hit the subscribe button, and let's begin.
Spider-Man's spider sensibility might just be the most inconsistent power of all time. Now, this isn't a diss to Spider-Man or any writers or anything, but I wanted to make this video because there's actually been a lot of discussion on the topic. People are discussing how Spider-Man's spider sense doesn't work sometimes, or this or that, myself included. I made a video a while back about how Peter was nerfed in Marvel Spider-Man 2, and one argument I brought up was the spider sense inconsistency.
Considering how crazy broad fiction is, I don't think the spider sense is even in the top 5 most inconsistent abilities. At the end of the day, fiction is a huge fucking thing. Like, obviously, there are so many different powers. The first thing that comes to mind is the Flash's speed, like how sometimes he's like the fastest fucker in the universe, and at other times, regular humans can tag him. I would say that his speed is inconsistent, but then again, you have the excuse of he holds back against humans, so...
It's just a thing that happens in all Spider-Man media, not just the games, but like the comics as well, movies, TV shows, everywhere else. This video is going to look at examples from the most recent popular Spider-Man thing that came out, which is Marvel Spider-Man 2.
Quick question, if the spider sense is inconsistent across every single form of media, then wouldn't it be consistently not an overly reliable ability? Like, just some food for thought.
Keep in mind, this isn't a diss to game at all, really, or anything, because like I said, this happens everywhere with Spider-Man. And the thing is, can you really blame the writers? Can you just imagine how much of a pain in the ass writing the spider sense is into everything? It just wouldn't make for great storytelling, maybe, because if it were written consistently all the time, it would be like maybe a lot of fights wouldn't even be fights kind of thing, because Peter would just dodge everything.
I don't know where you got this idea from, because that's not even how it's like in the comics. Like, it's basically just a form of precognition, but precognition can be overruled by skilled enough fighters, characters who can blitz the person with the precognition, or characters with certain hacks and abilities that bypass precog altogether. Like, it's really not an instant fight winner like you're implying. And at the end of the day, Daredevil's radar sense is superior to Spider-Man's spider sense. Yet even his radar sense can be foiled.
So, to do some research on this, I looked up how spider sense works exactly, and like that was difficult in itself, believe it or not. I thought it would be easy, but like, not really. A lot of people say the same thing, where it's like the writers make it however they want it to, or it's never been consistent across all mediums. The general consensus of spider sense is that it warns Peter of danger before it happens. But what does that entice? Like, is it immediate danger right before it hits him? Or like way before it gets to that point? I never really put too much thought into it, but like now I am, since I'm making this video. How does it work exactly? I've read some things where it slows down time for him, essentially letting him pick the best option. Or in a fight, it tells him the best move he should take. According to Google, and Google never lies, spider sense can give Peter around a few seconds to a higher span of time to react.
The spider sense does have a level of consistency across all forms of media, where it does allow him to react to danger and stuff. However, I'd be very careful using the comics definition for the sense, because obviously things change in adaptations. I mean, take the live-action Spider-Man, for example. Their senses, whilst similar in protecting them from danger to an extent, they do have similarities. For example, Andrew's allows him to pretty much see the future, Tom's allows him to bypass illusions, and Toby's allows him to see great distances in great detail. Just to give a few examples, I'd be very careful as well using the comic definition, because in that same definition, it brings up events that weren't even canon to the Insomniac verse, such as Green Goblin existing.
Basically, spider sense is overpowered. It gives Peter basically the possibility of just never getting hit.
That is not true at all. It gives him an advantage in combat, allowing him to potentially react to attacks that he would otherwise have been hit by. However, he can't dodge every single attack in fiction just because spider sense.
It's why we see him always jumping around and dodging attacks, because his spider sense allows that. So, spider sense is OP, right? So why do we always see Peter getting beat up often? Shouldn't spider sense realistically have him dodge every attack?
No, because Spider-Man, whilst being incredibly agile, there are still some villains in his rogue gallery that pose a legitimate threat to him. In the Insomniac verse, for example, the villains that he has previously fought can pose a threat to him if provoked. Like Mr. Negative was able to blitz him, Doc Ock could do it, Scorpion could do it when he had broken bones, and in your own gameplay, Sandman, debatably the most powerful character in the verse, can also do it. Like, it's really not that big of a problem. At the end of the day, if the villains couldn't tag Spider-Man, what would be the fucking point in having threats?
Well, yes, but also no. You see, just because he has this OP ability that theoretically lets Peter know every attack that comes his way, doesn't mean he will. Peter is still a human, he's gonna get hit, he makes mistakes. It's not set in stone, it doesn't make him invincible.
Yeah, no shit, it doesn't make him invincible. Omni-Man didn't give birth to him. But on a serious note, you could honestly just end the video right here. He explained that just because he has this insane ability, he can still get hit. Roll the credits, I guess.
That's not the reason I necessarily think the spider sense is inconsistent in some shape or form. The thing with spider sense is, as OP as it is, writers can get away with kind of forgetting about it a lot. Just to compare, think of power scaling among people with enhanced strength, right? Like when someone that's physically powerful loses to someone they probably shouldn't.
I would like to point out that in the Scorpion clip you showed, Peter clearly does react to him, like the spider sense does go off, as you can see by his eyes widening a fraction of a second before Scorpion attacks. At the end of the day, Scorpion is a villain that is fast enough to catch Miles Morales off guard. It's really not that hard to believe he could catch a weakened Peter off guard. And please don't refer to Kraven as peak human, the guy's confirmed to be one of the strongest characters in the Insomniac verse. Again, adaptations versus the comics.
People are gonna notice that quicker because it's a lot more blatant or obvious. Like, for example, I watched this Batman movie where Deathstroke and Batman's son, Damian, were fighting, and Damian actually beat Deathstroke. Now, in my opinion, Damian should not have beaten Deathstroke at all. That's not right.
I would like to point out that Batman can also beat Deathstroke, and both Batman and Damian Wayne were trained in martial arts by the same guy. Ra's al Ghul trained both of them. But on a serious note, I would like to point out that there is more to a fight than that may be. Like, just because a character is physically weaker than the opponent doesn't mean they're guaranteed to lose. At the end of the day, they could win by having a better weapon, or outsmarting them, or being the better fighter. There's a load of factors that go into a fight, it's not just who's stronger.
An example like that is just physically apparent, and it makes it harder for writers to write stuff like that in a way where they make someone strong lose to someone they shouldn't, because people like me will call them out on their BS.
Again, a strong character can lose to a weak character under certain contexts, like maybe the strong character was weakened, or maybe he was holding back. Maybe he was, I don't know, injured from a previous battle. Maybe he was exhausted, you know?
Now, spider sense, on the other hand, isn't like a physical thing. It's just a tingly feeling Peter gets in his head that we see sometimes. If the writers are showing Spider-Man fight someone and Peter gets hit, we often just kind of go with it because spider sense isn't really shown there. You see what I'm saying?
I feel like it's just a suspension of disbelief. Like, just because you don't see the spider sense activate in every single fight, you kind of just assume that it's working properly. Like in the live action films, for example, it's very rarely shown in like fight scenes, for example, but you just kind of assume that the spider sense is actually occurring because of how they're fighting, if that makes sense.
It's just easier for a writer to make spider sense inconsistent because you can get away with not having to incorporate it at all times.
Or how about this? What if Sandman was one of the most powerful villains Peter has ever fought and the spider sense is getting overwhelmed? Like, I don't see how this is so hard to believe. Fucking Kingpin of all people could overwhelm the spider sense in the first game.
And sometimes it may be done purposely and sometimes it's not. The Dark Knight Rises was the weakest of the trilogy, but also I see a spider sense topic everywhere where someone says spider sense should have saved Spider-Man here, blah blah blah, and I'm one of those people. I say the same thing.
Well, you should probably research harder because the spider sense is not Ultra Instinct. It can be overwhelmed and it frequently does get overwhelmed, especially since all it does is give Peter an instinctual reaction to danger, but Peter himself still has to be fast enough to perform this reaction. And if something is fast enough to blitz Peter, well, funnily enough, he's gonna have a hard time dodging.
So, to show you guys some visual examples, I'm gonna go through Marvel's Spider-Man 2, because it's easy to show examples that are animated, and it's more entertaining, I think, than showing like a comic book or something, right? And I think this game is kind of guilty in showing the inconsistency and the spider sensibility as well.
Strap in, motherfuckers.
So, I'm going to pick out some examples from the games, or games actually. I'm going to show an example or two from the first game as well, and I'll just go in depth with each. Okay, so Insomniac Spider-Man. I want to start off with showing what I think is a great example of the use of spider sense, which is in the first game at the ceremony for Miles' dad. His spider sense goes off when the demons are setting up bombs around the area. His sense here goes off and gives him a lot of time before the bombs actually go off.
Oh wow, a superhuman's relatively overpowered sense allows him to react in relatively good time to a bunch of humans. Whoa, crazy ability there, boys.
Although Peter ultimately didn't prevent the crime, it's not the point. There's a substantial amount of time here that allowed him to react and try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and are you gonna point out how the only thing he has to react to are regular fucking humans and like the bombs that he has no idea what they're about, since he's very rarely come across demon technology in his 8 years of experience?
As you can see here, he has time to walk through this crowd and all that before the bombs actually go off. Now, in the same game, his senses go off a little later at times. Like, for example, versus this crane coming at him, or versus these corrupt cops trying to kill him. Now, I think this is fine. There's no real threats until they actually come up, which is right before attacking Spider-Man in these two particular scenes. Okay, cool. That's great. I think overall, Spider-Sense was done really well in the first game.
Pay attention to what he just said. He said it's perfectly okay for the Spider-Sense to immediately appear at the very last second to protect him from danger or whatever. So, we're gonna keep that in mind whilst looking at the Spider-Man 2 examples.
That being said, there are still some scenes that make no sense. The biggest one that comes to mind is the Scorpion section, where Peter looks for him in this area here. How in the world is Peter's senses not exploding right now with Scorpion legit right behind him?
You showed the clip twice, and in both examples, Peter's sense clearly does go off. His eyes widen even though he's not even looking at Scorpion. At the end of the day, Scorpion is one of the fastest members of the Sinister Six, and Peter is weakened right now.
So, while Spider-Man 1 for the most part had good uses of the ability, there are just glaringly bad ones like this one I just showed you.
Yeah, a bad example like the one you just showed us, where in the example, Peter is clearly reacting at the last second with the spider sense to the threat in the immediate area. Wow, totally a bad example, guys.
Now, let's go to Marvel's Spider-Man 2, where I think it gets inconsistent on Peter in these sections. Now, I used this example before, but like this hand here from Sandman that smacks Peter onto the ground, wouldn't his spider sense warn him about something like this?
I'm pretty sure Joker made the exact same argument in his video, and I'll make the exact same response here. If you slow down the fight, you can see that Sandman is indeed fast enough to react to Spider-Man. Like, it's really not that hard to believe that one of the most powerful characters in the verse can react to Peter Parker. I don't get why people keep making these arguments, like acting as though Peter is the fastest fucker. Like, he isn't. There are some members of his rogues that can overwhelm his speed and senses.
It's a pretty big threat from Sandman that's taking a little long to get to Peter to hit him, and Peter still gets hit.
That's just appealing to cinematics. Obviously, every attack in the game is slow from our perspective, including Electro's lightning. They are obviously a lot faster in canon.
I know Peter's a human, and he can always still take a hit, but this seems a little bit more out of reach for me. The thing with Spider Sense is, I know it warns him of danger, but how exactly? Does it warn him of attacks mid-fight? It should, right? So like, let's say Spider-Man's fighting like Scorpion, and they're just throwing punch for punch. Does Spider Sense warn him of every single individual punch he throws, so Peter can react to each individual one? Because I'm pretty sure that's how Spider Sense is explained, and if that's the case, this attack should be avoided. Again,
no. Just because he can sense attacks doesn't mean he's guaranteed to dodge them. Also, I would like to point out that he is currently in the air right now. He's got barely any chance whatsoever of dodging this. His only option is to like web onto the nearby skyscrapers, but even then, that might not protect him.
But maybe Insomniac's Spider Sense works differently in that it doesn't do that. Maybe it warns him of incoming danger, and once Peter gets a hold of that, it doesn't work for him throughout the fight? I feel like that's wrong though. Or how about this situation here, where Kraven stabbed him? Shouldn't his spider sense warn him about the immediate knife that could kill him?
It literally does. If you slow down the cutscene, you can see Peter's left hand subconsciously reacting to the knife and trying to prevent Kraven from stabbing him. It's just that Kraven is on another tier in terms of power. I mean, he fought Black Suit Spider-Man and was just fine, so the fact that he blitzes base Peter should honestly be expected given his strength level.
You could argue that, like I said, kind of, his spider sense warns him of the danger, which in this case would be Kraven, but not of the specific attack of the knife that would kill him. But is that really how spider sense works?
Again, this is irrelevant to the spider sense because the sense does trigger in this scene. He reacts and tries grabbing the knife, but he's just not fast enough. Kraven is that powerful in this game. That's all there is to it. He's fighting a character who is way out of his league in terms of strength.
I don't think so. When you get to the nitty and gritty like I am, you start to think about stuff like this. Of course, you could just chalk it up to that Spider-Man just made a human mistake here and he got hit because he made that human mistake, which I think is also a valid reason.
I feel like my biggest pet peeve with Gotham Paladin is that he keeps making all of these kind of statements to try undermine his own argument and to try mitigate his backlash from his audience. Like, no, why do you keep, like, nervously treading on the topic? Like, say it with your full chest, dude.
And it could be used, but nonetheless, people are going to question it like I am right now. There's also just small questionable scenarios too, such as this mission on the ship. The metal birds that are introduced attacking Peter, Peter's senses don't go off on the random surprise attacks they managed to hit him with. It's like, why are his senses not going off at all?
This example I will give you is pretty dumb. The only explanation in the game that I can find is that Kraven and the Hunters used Electro and Vulture's technology to create the drones and, like, upgrade the weapons of the Hunters. But even then, it's plausible, since even with broken bones, he could react to those characters. I'll give you that, this is a pretty shit example.
It just seems odd to me. Or how about this scene with the giant henchman that attacks Peter? His senses don't go off here either, and Peter just takes his hit without any warning. Granted, it's supposed to be a funnier scene, so this is like the most nitpicking I'll probably do in this video. But, I mean, you still see my point here, right?
Nah, not really. I just think it's within character for Peter to chat shit, especially when he's under the influence of the symbiote, you know? He's clearly got a massive power level and he's enjoying himself, so let him have it. If he takes a hit, then honestly, it serves him right.
Now, here's a more questionable example from the game that I don't really have an explanation for. The church scene, where Spider-Man enters a church to look for Kraven, in which Kraven then gets a bunch of surprise hits on Peter, with Peter's spider sense not going off at all. Now, it actually goes off right here to dodge a knife that Kraven throws at Peter, so cool. That's a good example, and it establishes that his senses aren't affected by the symbiote, if that for some reason would be a factor for some people. But right after, Kraven gets a surprise drop on him like 3 times.
Yeah, and Kraven also ambushes him and sweeps his leg out from under him at the end of their boss battle later on in the game, pinning him against a tree and overpowering him. Do you know what that suggests? The fact that Kraven is too fast and too strong even for symbiote Peter when he's holding back. Like, yeah, obviously his sense is going to protect him from a knife of all things, but it won't protect him from someone like this.
And Peter is looking around helplessly as if he doesn't have his spider sense. Now this tripped me up at first because, like, okay, how did Kraven do that? How is Peter's spider sense not going off on any of these attacks? Is this not a spider sense situation one-on-one? Peter walking around slowly being careful about danger, and then danger coming at him, but his sense just doesn't go off?
I don't even think it's anything to do with that. Like, Kraven's just that fast. He's extremely skilled. He probably recognized early on that this character has a form of precognition and he's basing his combat style around it. I don't see why that's so hard to believe. I mean, Kraven's one of the best, if not the best fighters in the verse.
We don't see the tingle effect outside of that knife. It's just weird. Does Kraven have some sort of potion or something that allows him to be immune to spider sense? If he does, it's not explained in the game, nor is that really a thing from the comics as far as I'm aware. If it is, I apologize, I guess it maybe would be a specific story or something that I'm not aware of. And with that knife throw triggering Peter's sense, I just have to assume that Kraven is not immune to the spider sense and it's just not working here.
Or maybe Kraven is just fast enough to blitz Peter. I don't see why this is so hard to believe. I'm pretty sure you would say the exact same thing if Silver Surfer was able to blitz Peter. Like, you'd probably complain that his spider sense wasn't working, when it's like, no, these characters are just faster.
I know it's a suspenseful moment, but I think they could have showed his senses going off and it would still play out the same. They still could have had Kraven attack him, I guess. But without it triggering, now it's like, okay, it just doesn't add up. And keep in mind, I'm not expecting Peter to never get hit. He's not Ultra Instinct, I get that. But this is one of those situations where the writing itself is just inconsistent. I think it's a clear-cut example of the Spidey sense just being inconsistent. There might be an explanation I'm missing, but it just doesn't seem right to me.
It's becoming very difficult to watch this video because he's either not developing points, not making points, or kind of going back on his own comments. Like, I don't really know what else to say other than these characters are just that fast. You know, like, even in the Insomniac verse, in the first game, you know, characters can overwhelm his sense. In the Raimi films, his sense can be overwhelmed. Like, at the end of the day, why would you even have stakes if his sense can just dodge everything? He would be the most boring character. He would be like Heimdall from God of War. He can just dodge fucking everything. And even then, Heimdall could still get hit.
Or how about this example, where Peter's investigating the underground lab to find the lizard, and while he does, the lizard is literally stalking him, and Peter's senses don't go off until right before he gets hit, giving him no time to react.
Paladin, do you remember when you said this?
Now, I think this is fine. There's no real threats until they actually come up, which is right before attacking Spider-Man in these two particular scenes. Okay, cool. That's great.
Are you being hypocritical right now?
Shouldn't his spider senses have warned him about a giant monster with sharp claws like 10 feet away from him? In this particular example, there's nothing Peter could have done to react. If the lizard were to stab him with his claws, Peter had like no time to react to that.
Oh no, there's a character who's faster than Spider-Man. Woo, just totally never happened before or anything.
The point of spider sense was useless here. It was more like, you're gonna get hit here, rather than there's a danger present, here's your ample amount of time to react. This is a situation where I feel you can write it to make a little bit more sense. Like, Pete's senses go off, he's looking around the room for a bit, and then still gets hit by a lizard. That could make more sense. I'm not asking for Peter to never get hit, that's just not reasonable, he's gonna get hit.
Yet earlier in the video, you were saying that he should never get hit because the sense should allow him to dodge every attack. Like, you need to be consistent with your arguments, dude.
I'm asking for it to just be written a little better. But with that being said, the Insomniac games have had a lot of times where the spider sense is used really well, and I'm not going to gloss over that. In fact, I think it's used really well a lot more times than it's not. It's just that spider sense is difficult to write. I get that. It seems you always have to kind of nerf it to write an engaging story. It just feels like that. But even so, it doesn't excuse the fact that's going to make it inconsistent, right? You just can't deny it.
Alright, so I guess in the comics, every time he gets hit by Thanos or Thor or Hulk or the Phoenix Force or Silver Surfer or Gladiator or Hyperion or the High Evolutionary or Galactus or any of these characters that totally outclass Spider-Man, nah, it's just the spider sense being inconsistent, guys. And apparently we can't deny it.
But the thing with spider sense is, at the end of the day, it's something you can make inconsistent and less people will question it due to how subtle of a power it can be. It's not something apparent like super strength and how one person with it can beat somebody else. Rather, spider sense is a unique concept. There aren't many other characters like it unless you're like another spider person, I guess. And the point of its abilities are just kind of difficult to write, so writers unintentionally or intentionally just kind of forego it, which I honestly understand. Like I said, it's a pain in the ass to write around. But even so, I think rewriting specific scenes like some that I mentioned would make it so it's a little bit more consistent, because at the end of the day, I feel like no matter how you write spider sense, there's always going to be some natural inconsistencies, so it's best to just make it as less so as possible.
There are so many ways you can get around the spider sense without undermining it. You can have a character be faster than Peter, you can have Peter be weakened, you can have other characters with better senses like Daredevil, you can have technology which mitigates the spider sense, you can have, I don't know, another character who is adapted to the spider sense, you can have characters who are stronger and have their own precognition, which are indeed stronger than the spider sense. Like, it's fiction. The sky is the limit, use your imagination.
And in doing research for this video, the general consensus online is that it's really inconsistent. I guess I'm not the only one. But with knowing this, I guess it's better than other powers being inconsistent, right? Because Spider-Sense not working how we expect it to. Okay, it doesn't take me away from the story completely, personally. Things like if Batman's son beats Deathstroke in a 1v1 fight like I said, yeah, that takes me out of a story and it's really inconsistent. Spidey's Spider-Sense not working for one particular scene though? Not so much. But it happens so often that I think deserves the spot of being the most inconsistent superpower. Maybe there's another power out there that's just as inconsistent, but maybe there isn't.
And as I said before, it's not even in the top 5 most inconsistent abilities.
Spider-Man's such a popular character and there's so many different versions of him that it increases those odds with the Spider-Sense being difficult to write with. Maybe the Flash and his speed are the most inconsistent because that gets really inconsistent at times. That's honestly a good contender, but I still think Spider-Sense takes the cake. Maybe someone out there has some kind of list of all the inconsistencies of superheroes or something. Sounds difficult, but yeah.
Well, I'm done. The guy just doesn't make any more points. He just rambles for the end of the video, so I'm not going to waste any of your guys' time. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, and comment your favorite part of the video down below. Or maybe comment some things that I missed, or things that you would like to talk about and discuss with me. I'm open to any discussions, just please keep it civil. Alright guys, that's all from me for today. I'll see you all in the next one.